From hidden bosses that 99% of players never find to the one secret Miyazaki swore nobody discovered, these are the biggest secrets in Elden Ring. Placiduous Axe Warp. Fara Mazula floats in a storm outside time. You fought gargoyles, you've dodged lightning, you're thinking you've cleared the place. Then someone on Reddit posts, "Try lying down in this specific crater," and suddenly you're warping backwards through time to fight a two-headed dragon lord who was the original Elden Lord before the Erd Tree even existed. Dragon Lord Placiduous Axe doesn't get a cutscene entrance, doesn't get a boss arena you walk into. You have to perform a gesture in a random spot and trust that From Software coded something there. The fight itself is pure chaos laser beams, teleportation, a moveset that makes Millennia look like a tutorial boss. And the lore drop? This guy ruled before the Golden Order, before Marika, before everything you thought mattered. The dragons had their own age, their own Elden Lord, and it all got erased when the Erd Tree showed up. The crazy part is, how many players never find this? You can beat the game 10 times, finish every questline, and never know Placiduous Axe exists because you didn't think to take a nap in a magic crater. From Software hid one of the hardest boss fights behind the most random gesture in the game and didn't tell anyone. And that's not even the strangest part, because if Placiduous Axe ruled before the Erd Tree, where did the Erd Tree come from? And why does the game never explain how the Golden Order erased an entire civilization? That answer's coming. But first, let's talk about the secret Miyazaki claimed broke the internet. The Candle Tree Shield. For 2 years, players searched. Miyazaki said in a 2024 interview that a small element remained undiscovered, and the entire community lost their minds trying to find it. Sage's Cave in Altus Plateau. Illusory wall. Candle tree wooden shield sitting in a chest like it's not important. The design shows a tree on fire, branches spreading in a very specific pattern. Nobody cared. It was a shield with mediocre stats in a game where shields are for people who hate fun. Then Shadow of the Erd Tree dropped in June 2024, and the very first trailer showed Messmer's symbol, a tree on fire with branches spreading in that exact same pattern. The shield wasn't random loot, it was a 2-year-long teaser for DLC content hidden in the base game since launch. Miyazaki literally spoiled his own expansion, and nobody noticed because we were too busy hitting every wall in the game looking for secrets. The shield itself does nothing special, doesn't unlock quest lines, doesn't have hidden effects. It's just From Software proving they can plant hints in plain sight and watch us walk past them for 24 months straight. Peak trolling. But here's where it gets darker. If From Software planted a 2-year teaser in the base game, what else are they hiding? What if there's another shield, another item, another throwaway piece of loot that won't make sense until DLC 2 drops? And more importantly, what if some secrets are designed to never be found? Keep that paranoia. You'll need it. Miquella's divestment. Shadow of the Erd Tree rewrites what you thought you knew about Miquella, the kindest demigod who everyone trusted. Turns out Miquella shed his body piece by piece across the realm of Shadow, leaving behind crosses marking where he abandoned his doubts, his love, his fear. Balurat has a secret room you'd never find without guides, and inside is a cross showing where Miquella ditched his flesh. Each cross ties to his transformation into a god, except he's not becoming divine through worship or power. He's doing it by cutting away everything that made him mortal. His charm, the thing that made everyone love him unconditionally, was part of what he abandoned, meaning every NPC who talks about Miquella with reverence, they're not following him out of genuine belief, they're following magical compulsion. The divestment crosses reframe the entire DLC. You're not chasing a benevolent god trying to save the world. You're tracking a manipulator who weaponized love itself and then threw it away when it stopped being useful. The secret rooms, the hidden crosses, they're not Easter eggs. They're evidence of premeditated transformation into something that doesn't need humanity anymore. But Miquella's charm raises a question nobody wants to answer. Who else fell under his spell? Because if Miquella could make entire armies worship him without knowing why, what if some of the NPCs you trust are still charmed? What if you're charmed and don't know it? The game never tells you when the charm breaks. And that's the point. Now let's talk about something growing where it shouldn't. Godwyn's death route. You fight crabs. Normal Elden Ring activity. Then you look closer and realize the crab has a human face embedded in its shell, Godwyn's face. Godwyn died in soul only during the Night of Black Knives, but his body kept living, spreading deathroot corruption across the lands between like cancer. His mutated face appears on crabs, trees, ruins, everything touched by undeath. It's a systematic infection showing how Godwyn's immortal body refuses to stop growing even though his soul is gone. The Prince of Death is a literal description of what he became, a body without a soul that just keeps spreading, keeps mutating, keeps putting its face on wildlife like some kind of cosmic branding exercise. The creepiest part is how subtle it is. You can miss it completely if you're not paying attention to enemy designs. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's Godwin's flesh puppeteering a crab. That's Godwin's body forming a second nervous system under the castle. But Godwin's infection reveals something worse than death. It reveals immortality without consciousness is the real horror. Because if Godwin's body is still alive, but his soul is dead, is he suffering? Does his corpse know it's spreading? Or is he trapped in a state worse than death, aware but unable to stop? The game never answers this, and maybe that's crueler than any boss fight. Now let's talk about shortcuts that break progression. Deep Root Depths, Path, Lindell Sewers. You're fighting omens, dodging madness, having a terrible time. Then you hit a wall. It disappears. You hit another wall behind the first wall. That disappears too. Suddenly, you're in Deep Root Depths, a massive underground area with its own bosses and quest lines, completely bypassing the need to fight Starscourge Radon. Fa's quest, which normally requires beating one of the hardest bosses in the game, now opens up at any point you can reach the capital. The double illusory wall isn't marked, isn't hinted at, isn't telegraphed in any way. It's just there, waiting for you to bonk the right stone twice. This one secret turns the entire progression curve on its head. You can reach endgame content in the early mid-game just by knowing where to punch. From Software did this on purpose. They built a 40-hour critical path, then hit a shortcut that cuts it in half. The message is clear exploration matters more than linear progression. If you're smart enough to find the path, you deserve the rewards. But here's the real question. How many players beat the game the right way when the wrong way is faster? From Software built a linear path, then hit a shortcut that makes half the game optional. They're not punishing sequence breaking, they're encouraging it. And if they encourage it here, what other progression skips exist that nobody's documented yet? That answer involves enemies that aren't what they seem. Transformed enemies. You see a pot, a barrel, a normal-looking enemy just vibing. You walk past because why wouldn't you? Then on your 8th playthrough, you accidentally roll into it, and it explodes into a horrifying monster that drops a larval tear, the rarest item in the game. Transformed enemies hide in plain sight across the entire map, 7 different variants disguised as harmless objects or weak mobs. They don't attack first. They don't give visual cues. They just sit there waiting for you to get close enough, then reveal their true form and try to kill you. The larval teardrop is payment for paranoia. From Software rewards you for attacking everything, for trusting nothing, for treating every pot like it might be a mimic even though mimics aren't in this game. This mechanic does something worse than train paranoia. It rewards it, because once you know transformed enemies exist, you can't trust anything. That barrel could be lethal. That weak soldier might be hiding a larval tear. From Software turned the entire game world into a trust exercise where the correct answer is always trust nothing. And that philosophy extends to mechanics that literally pay you more for overkill. Overkill mechanic. You one-shot an enemy. Normal Souls behavior. Except you get 20% more runes than you should have. Turns out if you overkill an enemy, deal 150% or more of their total HP in a single hit, the game rewards you with bonus runes. It's not explained anywhere. No tutorial, no item description, no NPC dialogue. Just a hidden multiplier that's been in the game since launch, waiting for players to notice their rune counts didn't match their expectations. The mechanic encourages glass cannon builds, rewards over-leveling, and turns farming into a math problem where you're calculating exactly how much damage you need to trigger the threshold. And nobody told you it existed. This is From Software's design philosophy in one mechanic. They code entire systems, hide them completely, and trust that someone will eventually notice the numbers don't add up. The overkill bonus is a 20% damage tax on players who don't optimize. And From Software never told you it existed. So here's the question. How many other invisible multipliers are affecting your playthrough right now? How many hidden bonuses are you missing because you don't one-shot enemies? The game is rewarding behavior you didn't know was optimal. And that same philosophy extends to DLC fragments hidden behind jumps you're not supposed to make. Shadowkeep platforming. Shadowkeep in the DLC is a castle. You explore rooms, fight knights, standard Souls castle behavior. Then you notice ledges, gaps between buildings, places that look like you could jump to them if you really commit. You make the leap, land on a hidden platform, and find a chalice containing 5 Scadutree fragments, the most valuable upgrade material in the entire expansion. The platforming section isn't telegraphed. No glowing items, no messages, just architectural design that implies you could go here if you're brave enough. Commander Gaius as a boss ties to this area, but the real reward is the fragments, which boost your damage and defense in the realm of Shadow by a massive amount. Finding this early turns the DLC from brutally hard to merely challenging. The secret tests your spatial awareness and willingness to experiment with traversal. From Software designed an entire vertical maze and hid the best loot at the bottom, betting that most players wouldn't think to jump off the main path. They were right, but the Shadowkeep platforming reveals how From Software thinks about level design. If they're hiding massive upgrades behind precision jumps in a DLC most players will never complete, what does that say about their priorities? It's not about everyone seeing everything, it's about rewarding the obsessive, the explorers, the people who look at a castle and think, I bet I can break this. But Shadow Keep's platforming reveals something about From Software's priorities. They'd rather hide essential upgrades behind precision jumps than make them accessible, because those 5 Scadutree fragments could mean the difference between beating the DLC or quitting, and From Software hid them where most players will never look. That's not bad design. It's gatekeeping by skill. And that same gatekeeping philosophy extends to items hidden in places you'd never shoot. Bell-bearing pots. You're exploring the DLC wilderness. You see a pot hanging from a tree branch, swaying in the wind. Most players ignore it. It's decoration, except if you shoot it with an arrow, it breaks open and a bell bearing falls out of items that permanently expand merchant inventories. There are multiple pots scattered across the realm of Shadow, each containing different bearings, and every single one is missable because shooting hanging pottery isn't intuitive gameplay. You have to actively think, what if that pot I can barely see at the edge of render distance is important? And then waste an arrow testing your theory. The reward is vendors who suddenly sell upgrade materials you'd otherwise have to farm for hours. This secret is pure From Software trolling. They put progression items in breakable decorations and trusted that nobody would systematically shoot every pot in the game. And they were mostly right. Guides had to document pot locations because finding them organically is basically impossible. But the bell-bearing pots raise a bigger question. If From Software hid essential merchant upgrades in random pots, what other crucial items are hidden in places we'd never think to check? What if there's a pot somewhere that unlocks an entire questline and nobody's found it yet? That's the secret working as designed. But bell-bearing pots prove From Software will hide essential merchant upgrades anywhere. Literally anywhere. And if they'll put progression items in random hanging pots, what's stopping them from hiding entire questlines in breakable environmental objects? What if there's a pot that unlocks a secret ending and nobody's found it because shooting random decorations seems insane? Midra boss fight, Abyssal Woods, the scariest area in Elden Ring, full of madness and death and things that kill you by looking at you. Midra, Lord of Frenzied Flame, is hidden at the end of a multi-step puzzle that requires navigating this nightmare zone perfectly. He's an optional boss that most players miss entirely, because getting to him means surviving an area designed to make you quit. The fight itself is spectacular frenzied flame attacks, madness buildup, a moveset that punishes hesitation. And the remembrance you get is one of the most powerful in the game, both for the weapon it crafts and the lore it reveals about the Three Fingers' true nature. Midra is the secret boss, representing the absolute peak of content you'll never see unless you're determined to see everything. From Software locked their best DLC boss behind their worst area on purpose. They wanted Midra to feel earned, to be a reward for players willing to push through genuine horror to reach him. But Midra's placement reveals something critical about DLC design. Shadow of the Erdtree is about adding content that feels special, because so few people reach it. The entire expansion is built on secrets layered on secrets, with Midra at the center like a test of dedication. And if you can beat him, you've earned something most players never will. But Midra's placement reveals From Software's endgame. Content isn't for everyone anymore. Shadow of the Erdtree is designed for players who beat the base game and wanted more secrets, more obscurity, more reasons to explore. Midra is the reward for that dedication, a boss so hidden that finding him feels like winning a separate game. And that philosophy extends to mechanics that let you duplicate your victories, if you know where to look. If you are enjoying the breakdown so far and don't want to miss out on any new releases, smash that subscribe button and hit that notification bell. Remembrance Coffins. You beat a major DLC boss. Get their remembrance. Think you're done. Then you find a coffin in a hidden location. You climb in. The game duplicates your remembrance, letting you craft both boss weapons instead of choosing one. There are 3 coffins total in Shadow of the Erdtree Ria's Cliffs, Scataview, and one more spot that requires platforming to reach. Each coffin works only once, meaning you have to choose which remembrances to duplicate carefully. It's walking mausoleums from the base game, but better, except they're hidden behind exploration challenges that make mausoleums look easy. The coffins don't explain themselves, don't have markers, don't appear on maps. You just have to know they exist and remember where they are. This is From Software saying, we know you want both boss weapons, so we hid the solution in 3 places you'll probably never find. It's generous and cruel simultaneously, which is basically their motto. But Remembrance Coffins reveal a design pattern that runs through the entire game. From Software believe in making you work for every advantage, every shortcut, every quality of life feature. And they're right to do it, because finding a coffin feels infinitely better than having the game point you toward it. But Remembrance Coffins reveal the core of From Software's design. They'd rather make you work for convenience than give it freely. Painting hunts. You find a painting, look at it, get a vague sense of where the artist stood. Then you're supposed to go to that exact location and find a ghost who gives you an item. 8 paintings total between base game and DLC. Some reward weapons, some talismans, some just lore. The Spiral Tree seal in the DLC is locked behind a painting puzzle that requires you to remember what a specific tower looked like from a specific angle. Flightless Bird painting points to a spot in Liurnia that's completely unmarked. Domain of Dragons sends you to Altus Plateau for the Rock Heart. Every painting is a treasure hunt, with minimal clues, testing your memory and observational skills. The ghosts don't move, don't trigger quests. They just hand you an item and disappear. Pure exploration for exploration's sake. From Software built an entire art gallery system and made it optional collectible content. You can beat the game never knowing paintings do anything. But painting hunts reveal how From Software thinks about rewards. They're not about giving you the best gear, they're about making you feel smart for solving environmental puzzles. The items are secondary to the satisfaction of connecting a painting to a location and being right. That dopamine hit is what keeps players exploring long after they've finished the main story. And that philosophy extends to mechanics that affect exploration itself, like Spirit Ashes that have hidden behaviors you'd never expect. Spirit Ash, secrets. You summon Latenna. She sits there shooting arrows. Standard ranged support behavior. Except if you summon her near Albinoric wolves, she mounts one and becomes mobile, completely changing how she functions in combat. This isn't explained. No item description mentions it. You just have to summon her in the right place and watch it happen. Other Spirit Ashes have hidden interactions too. Some cower near dragons. Some buff each other if you summon multiple. Some have behaviors that only trigger under specific conditions. The game expects you to experiment, to try every Ash in every situation, to discover mechanics through play rather than reading wikis. This approach to Spirit Ashes mirrors how From Software designs everything. Depth exists in layers. Surface-level mechanics are functional, but the real power comes from understanding interactions the game never tells you about. But Spirit Ash secrets prove something crucial about From Software's trust in players. They code these interactions knowing most people will never see them. They're fine with that. The discovery is the point, not universal knowledge. And that philosophy culminates in secrets that affect the entire game world, like weather patterns that change how you play. Let's talk about rain that makes you rich. Golden Rain. Night falls. You're exploring. Suddenly enemies start glowing gold and drop way more runes than normal. Golden Rain events trigger randomly, turning standard farming into exponential gains if you're in the right place at the right time. The effect lasts until dawn, giving you a limited window to exploit it. No warning, no announcement, just a weather pattern that multiplies your rewards. Combined with gold pickled foul foot consumables, you can turn a 10-minute farming session into enough runes to level up multiple times. The game doesn't tell you this exists. You just have to notice enemies glowing and realize something changed. From Software hid a farming buff in a weather system and trusted that players would figure it out. They were right, but Golden Rain reveals how From Software thinks about player time. They don't want you grinding for hours. They want you exploring, discovering, experimenting. The rain is a reward for being in the world, for playing naturally instead of optimizing. It's generosity disguised as random chance, and that same philosophy extends to areas that exist purely for atmosphere, like villages full of friendly monsters. Jarburg. Mintgelmeir has a lift. You use a medallion. It takes you to Jarburg, a village populated entirely by living jars who just want to exist peacefully. No bosses, no loot worth mentioning, just a safe space in a game that usually wants you dead. The jars have dialogue, questlines, personalities. Dialos's quest culminates here, giving narrative weight to what could have been a joke location. But Jarburg's real purpose is atmosphere. It's From Software proving they can build areas that aren't about challenge, that exist purely to make the world feel lived in and strange. The jars are people. They're not enemies. And visiting them feels like discovering something precious in a game that usually traffics in misery. Jarburg is hidden behind the assumption that every area must have combat. Players skip it because they expect another boss fight and don't understand why From Software would waste development time on peaceful content. But that's exactly why Jarburg matters. It subverts expectations, rewards curiosity, and reminds you that the lands between has more going on than endless boss rushes. And that philosophy of subversion extends to entire secret areas that rewrite progression completely. Let's talk about Blood Palaces you can reach way too early. Mogwyn Palace. Consecrated Snowfield is an endgame area. Getting there requires multiple quest lines, late-game access, serious commitment, or you get Pureblood Knight's medal from Varus Quest and teleport straight to Mogwyn Palace from anywhere, skipping 30 hours of content. The palace is full of blood cultists, rivers of blood everywhere, and Moog himself waiting at the end. But more importantly, it's the best rune farming location in the entire game. The bird that walks off a cliff for 11,000 runes, the sleeping Albinoryx worth thousands each, are all accessible as soon as you complete Vera's quest, which you can do in the first few hours. Early access to Mogwin turns the difficulty curve into a joke. You can overlevel before Godric. From Software put their best farming spot behind a medallion you get early, knowing players would exploit it. They don't care. If you're smart enough to find it, you earn the advantage. But Mogwin Palace reveals From Software's philosophy on sequence breaking. They don't lock content behind level requirements, they hide it, and trust that finding it makes you feel clever enough to deserve the rewards. And that trust extends to entire DLC areas that most players never reach, like zones that require specific gestures to access. The Hinterlands. Shadowkeep has rooms, standard castle exploration. Then you find a spot where you can use the "Oh Mother" gesture. A secret wall opens. Suddenly you're in the Hinterlands, an entire hidden area with its own bosses, quests, and lore. Ymir's questline culminates here, revealing secrets about the Greater Will and the fingers that manipulate the world. The area is multiple zones with unique enemies and environmental storytelling, and you'd never find it without a guide because using specific gestures in specific locations isn't intuitive gameplay. From Software coded an entire region and locked it behind a gesture input most players don't experiment with. The Hinterlands represents From Software at peak confidence. They built substantial content, hid it completely, and assumed someone would eventually figure it out through trial and error. But the Hinterlands reveal something crucial about DLC design. Shadow of the Erdtree is the Elden Ring for people who already beat Elden Ring and want even more obscure secrets. The entire expansion assumes you're comfortable with From Software's language, that you'll try weird things in weird places just to see what happens. And if you do, you get entire areas as rewards. That same philosophy extends to boss fights hidden behind environmental puzzles. Charo's Grave, Skadjuvu in the DLC. There's a dragon. Most players don't know this because Ride the Dragon isn't a button prompt that appears. You just have to try it. And if you do, the dragon takes you to Charo's hidden grave, where the Putrescence Knight waits. The boss drops unique gear and contributes to DLC completion. But getting there requires figuring out that From Software hid a dragon taxi service in their expansion. The grave itself is a full boss arena, not a quick encounter. From Software built an entire fight and locked it behind "try to mount the dragon," which is a sentence that sounds ridiculous until you've played enough Souls games to know that ridiculous is standard operating procedure. Charo's Grave is From Software saying, "We assume you'll try everything, so we coded for that." They're right to assume it, because the community has learned that nothing is just scenery. But this secret reveals how much trust From Software has in their audience. They don't need to explain dragon mounting because they know players will experiment. They don't need tutorials because the community shares discoveries faster than any guide could document them. And that trust pays off in player engagement that lasts years. Speaking of lasting engagement, let's talk about the secret that ties everything together. The Metter connection, Cathedral of Manus. Metter, hidden deep in the DLC. You complete Ymir's quest. Suddenly you're fighting Matter, Mother of Fingers. She's the source of the two fingers, the beings who've been guiding you since the tutorial. Turns out the fingers are children of an alien entity that crash-landed in the lands between and started manipulating civilizations. The Greater Will is a force so distant that its messengers are making up orders based on broken communications. Meter reveals that every quest given by the fingers, every divine guidance, was improvised by creatures that lost contact with their actual god centuries ago. You've been following false prophets who genuinely believe they're delivering truth. This one secret recontextualizes the entire game. Every finger you trusted, every maiden who spoke for the Greater Will, they were all following instructions from a mother creature who barely understands what she's doing. And that's why Metter is the ultimate Elden Ring secret. She exposes that the entire religious framework of the lands between is a cosmic accident. From Software built 200 hours of lore around Faith, then hid the Faith is a Lie boss behind multiple questlines most players never complete. If you enjoyed this video and want to see every hidden gameplay mechanic in Dark Souls explained, click the video on the screen.